Soo-min was standing at my door on her way to my place. She appeared less like a corporate executive and more like a high priestess of a dying religion. In part 1, there was that shocking moment when the lie was confronted and exposed. The next day at the office, it felt like everyone knew about it. Welcome back, story lovers, to part 2. The lobby of Shin Media is a brutalist masterpiece of glass and reinforced concrete, a cathedral dedicated to the gods of commerce and the ruthless preservation of public image. Usually, the air hums with the frantic, caffeinated energy of 1,000 ambitious lives, vibrating with the sounds of deals being struck in 4 languages. But today, the atmosphere has been replaced by a silence so absolute it feels pressurized, like the cabin of a plane losing altitude at 30,000 feet. Aisha steps through the heavy glass doors. Her footsteps, usually the sharp, confident staccato of a woman who owns every square inch of the room she occupies, now echo like a lonely heartbeat against the white, unyielding marble floor. She feels the weight of 1,000 eyes, but when she looks up, no one will meet her gaze. They are all looking at the walls. A macro shot of her wedding ring, a piece of gold that looked like a Victorian heirloom, but cost exactly £60 in a moment of desperate pragmatism. It is pictured next to a yellowed, curled receipt from a pawn shop in Camden, London, dated 3 years ago. The text overlaid across the screens is jagged, bleeding a digital crimson, screaming in a font that looks like a ransom note. The Great Deception. Soo-min didn't just want me gone. In the Darwinian ecosystem of Shin Media, a resignation is a mercy, and Soo-min does not deal in mercy. She wanted to skin me alive in front of the world, to turn my very existence into a cautionary tale about the dangers of ambition without pedigree. In the time it took to ride the elevator from the parking garage, the London prodigy, the woman who had resurrected 3 failing subsidiaries and navigated the treacherous waters of the Hansung merger, had been dissected and discarded. The media was already circling the building, smelling the copper tang of blood. But it wasn't the headlines that made my skin crawl. It was the vibration of the building itself, the silence of a falling axe. The elevator doors slide open with a chime that sounds like a scream in the tomb-like quiet of the lobby. Soo-min emerges, looking less like a corporate executive and more like a high priestess of a dying religion. She is flanked by a phalanx of frozen employees, people Aisha had mentored, people whose careers she had saved, who now look away as she passes, as if her disgrace might be contagious. Soo-min doesn't stop. Her heels click a rhythmic, lethal countdown against the stone, a sound like a firing squad loading their rifles. She looks like a queen who has just successfully ordered an execution and is already thinking about lunch. As she draws level with Aisha, she doesn't stop, but she leans in, her breath cold against Aisha's ear, her voice a freezing mist that smells of expensive mint and malice. Lineage is a blood type, Aisha. It's written in the marrow, passed down through centuries of breeding and burden. You're just a ghost in a 5-pound band, haunting a house you weren't invited to. You thought you could bridge the gap with a lie and a blazer? The flight to Heathrow leaves at midnight. Don't be late. You no longer exist in this city. You never did. The luxury of the lobby ends at the threshold of the ladies' room. Here, the polished marble gives way to utilitarian tile, and a single fluorescent bulb flickers overhead, casting rhythmic, sickly shadows that pulse like a migraine. Aisha stands before the mirror, staring at a stranger. The woman in the glass has perfect skin and a tailored suit, but her eyes are wide, the pupils blown with the shock of a sudden, violent impact. Her breathing is shallow, jagged, catching in her throat like a shard of glass. She looks down at the gold band on her left hand, the lie that bought her a seat at the table. It was the prop that shielded her from the predatory questions of a corporate culture that didn't know what to do with a single, powerful black woman, except to find a way to diminish her. To them, a husband was a stabilizer, a sign of traditional values. It was the armor she wore to war.
Her hands shake, a violent tremor of adrenaline and shame. Then they steady into a terrifying, unnatural stillness.
She doesn't just slide the ring off, she rips it. The metal scrapes her skin, leaving a thin, angry red welt that begins to bead with blood. She drops it. It hits the bottom of the metal trash can with a hollow, final clang that echoes off the tile like a gunshot in an alleyway. She reaches up, her fingers fumbling with the pins of her tight, professional bun, the hairstyle she'd worn for 18 months to look manageable. She pulls them out one by one, dropping them like spent casings. Her dark, wavy curls spill down her shoulders, wild, heavy, and reclaimed. They wanted a fraud? I'll give them a riot. They wanted the girl who played by their rules, who tucked her hair away and wore a fake history like a suit of armor. No more bun, no more ring. No more hiding in the light of their approval. If I am to be a ghost, I will be the kind that burns the house down. You lied to me. Jae-sung's office on the 40th floor is a glass box suspended over the abyss. The city lights of Seoul are a blurred neon smear through the floor-to-ceiling glass, a galaxy of cold, indifferent stars. Jae-sung is a silhouette against the dark, his back to the door, his shoulders rigid as if he's bracing for a physical blow. Aisha enters, but the air in the room is like lead, thick and impossible to breathe. The scent of his expensive cologne, sandalwood, iron, and the faint bitterness of oversteeped tea is sharp and suffocating. He turns slowly. The CEO mask? The ironclad composure he's been forced to wear since the day he was born into the Shin dynasty is terrifyingly still. His eyes, usually the only part of him that showed warmth, are now dark, unreadable pits. A husband, Aisha. A life built in a Camden shop window? You didn't just lie to the board. You didn't just jeopardize the merger with the Han Group. You let me touch a ghost. You let me believe in a woman who was a fiction from the waist up. Was any of it real? Or was I just another box you needed to check on your way to the top? I gave them the version of me they were willing to respect. Do you have any idea what it's like? A single black woman in this office is a target, a curiosity, a diversity hire to be managed and eventually discarded when she gets too loud.
But a married woman? She's a professional. She has a stable life. She is safe. I didn't do it to hurt you, Jason. I did it because I was tired of being the only person in this building who had to prove she deserved to breathe every single morning before she could even start her job. You think I cared about the permit? You think I cared about the optics for the shareholders? I didn't fall for the ring, Aisha. I fell for the woman who looked at me and didn't see a crown or a bank account. I fell for the fire in your eyes when you thought no one was looking, the way you'd solve a crisis with a smile that could cut glass. It was gravity. It was the only real thing in my life, the only thing that wasn't a calculated move on a chessboard. And now
I'm standing in a room full of smoke, wondering if any of it happened at all. The way I feel when you look at me, that isn't smoke. That is the only truth I have left. The ring was a lie, a survival tactic. But the woman standing in front of you is the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing your father's mistakes because she believed in the dream you sold her. Are you going to let them win? Are you going to punish me for surviving a world that was designed to drown me? The press conference. The grand briefing room is a coliseum of chrome and blue light. The atmosphere is predatory, the air thick with the smell of ozone from the television equipment and the cloying, expensive perfume of the city's elite. The chairman stands at the podium, his face a stone mask of dynastic pride, his very presence an assertion of power. The shutters of 50 cameras fire in a synchronized metallic rattle, a firing squad of lenses. He is seconds away from announcing Aisha's termination and his son's strategic merger with Soo-min's family,
a marriage of balance sheets and bloodlines. The chairman thought he was presiding over a funeral. He thought he could bury the Scareball and the girl in the same shallow grave and call it progress. He forgot that when you back a king into a corner, he stops playing by the rules of the court. He forgot that fire doesn't care about the pedigree of the wood it burns. Jae-sung walks onto the stage. He doesn't take his designated seat.
He ignores the teleprompter, stepping past the prepared remarks that would have ended Aisha's career and his own happiness. He walks straight to the podium, physically eclipsing his father. The camera flashes intensify, a blinding strobe light chaos that turns the room into a fragmented dream. Jae-sung leans into the microphone, his gaze cutting through the crowd, ignoring the reporters, looking straight to the back of the room where Aisha stands. She is unmasked, her hair wild, her neck bare, a silhouette of absolute, terrifying defiance. My father will tell you this company is built on tradition, on the sanctity of our name, and the purity of our image.
But if our tradition requires us to destroy a woman for the crime of seeking the respect she earned with her own sweat and intellect, then this company is a corpse. I will not lead a graveyard. I will not be the face of a lie. A collective, sharp intake of breath ripples through the room, a sound like a receding tide. The chairman reaches for Jae-sung's arm, his face purpling with a mixture of shock and dynastic fury, his fingers digging into his son's suit. But Jae-sung brushes him off with cold, surgical precision, stepping away from the legacy he was born to inherit. I am resigning as CEO of Shin Media, effective immediately. Every share I own will be liquidated by morning. I am choosing a life that is honest, even if it is small. I am choosing her.
A new beginning in London. 5 years later. A converted industrial loft in East London. The walls are exposed brick, scarred by history, and the windows are massive, rain-streaked portals overlooking the gray, churning Thames. It's a space of frantic, joyful creation, smelling of charcoal, expensive paper, and the comforting bitterness of fresh coffee. Aisha and Jae-sung are hunched over a heavy oak drafting table, their shoulders pressed together as they argue over a blueprint for their own architectural firm. Their laughter is low, intimate, the sound of people who no longer have to look over their shoulders to see who is watching. We walked away from an empire of glass and steel. We let it burn, and we didn't look back to see who was warming their hands at the flames.
In the ashes of that life, we found something that couldn't be traded, sold, or faked. We found the weight of our own names, stripped of titles and expectations. The closing shot moves to a sun-drenched community garden tucked away in a quiet corner of London, where the city's roar is muffled by the rustle of leaves. Aisha is radiant in a flowing silk dress, her natural curls caught in the afternoon breeze, glowing in the amber light. She is lifting a toddler, a boy with Jae-sung's quiet, observant intensity and Aisha's fierce, unbreakable smile. Jae-sung approaches, the permanent tension finally gone from his jaw, his eyes soft. He reaches out to study the child, his hand resting over Aisha's. The sunlight catches their hands. No fake gold, no pawnshop receipts. Just two matching, simple bands of hammered silver that mean exactly what they say. The lie died in the shadows of Seoul. The truth was born here, in the rain and the light of a city that doesn't care who your father was. I am no longer the girl with the fake ring. I am a woman who is seen. Every real, broken, beautiful piece of me. And for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I belong. The end.
My life is a meticulously calibrated monument to control. I am Aisha, 29, a black woman from London, and every line, every angle, every shade of my professional existence is a deliberate act of carving out space in a world that wasn't built for me. Specifically, the high-stakes, traditional, and often suffocating corporate sectors of Asia. This wasn't just about glass ceilings. It was about navigating labyrinthine cultural codes, unspoken expectations, and the constant draining pressure to prove my worth in a landscape where my very presence was an anomaly, a potential disruption. 2 years ago, I arrived in Seoul, shedding a London where my ambition, though acknowledged, was never quite given the full, unforgiving runway it deserved. 5'11", a silhouette cut from dark mahogany, usually clad in a formidable structure of silk and wool. Tonight, it was a bespoke charcoal suit, severe shoulders, trousers that moved with a liquid, graceful defiance. My hair was pulled back, a sleek, architectural statement meant to convey one thing: unwavering focus. But I also know this intensity often reads as a challenge. It was a deliberate choice, a refusal to soften, to shrink, to make myself palatable. This honed edge, forged over years of being underestimated and tokenized, was both my shield and my sharpest weapon. And in the rigid, patriarchal offices of Seoul, that sharp aesthetic was a liability. It invited the subtle, insidious question, masked in politeness: are you married? Do you have children? It was the corporate code for, can we trust you to be stable, predictable, safely occupied by another man, so you can dedicate your entire being to our corporation without distraction? A single, ambitious woman, especially one who didn't fit the expected mold, was a wild card, a potential disruption to the carefully balanced ecosystem of family-run conglomerates. For 2 years, my honesty had been a dangerous luxury. My truth was deemed too volatile. 2 major regional projects, both slipped through my fingers. The feedback always couched in vague terms about cultural fit or long-term commitment concerns. My singular focus, my unattached status, was misinterpreted as a lack of grounding, a potential disruption. The solution came one rainy night over a bowl of soju, offered by Minho, my loyal South Korean best friend. He understood the cold, logical constraints better than I ever could. Wear the ring, Aisha, he'd urged, sliding a crumpled napkin across the table like an illicit proposal. It is a professional amulet, a shield. The respect they deny the single woman, they will grant the married one. It's a key, not a cage, if you choose to see it that way, he'd added, his eyes reflecting the frantic neon glow of the street outside. I had argued, voice tight with indignation. It's a lie, Minho, a complete fabrication of my identity. But he'd only shrugged, a gesture of weary, almost cynical resignation. It is unnecessary fiction, then, one that allows you to play the game on their terms so you can eventually change the rules or, perhaps, break them entirely. I hated the forced surrender. I hated the deceit, the tightening noose of the lie even before it had begun. But the prize, the creative direction for the massive Shin family luxury hotel chain, was too significant to lose over ancient bias. I bought the simplest, most functional gold band I could find. It wasn't a symbol of love or union. It was a cold, hard piece of professional armor, a thinly veiled shackle, a thin, unadorned circle of metal that felt utterly alien on my finger, a bitter, constant reminder of the compromise I'd made, of the part of myself I'd buried. The day I slipped the cold metal onto my finger, my ascent began. The subtle shifts were immediate, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but glaringly obvious to me. The lingering, probing questions ceased. The polite, yet invasive inquiries about my weekends vanished. I was no longer a potential disruption. I was a known quantity, safely anchored, and therefore professionally viable. A lie made me safe. The collision. The meeting was held in the Shin Media Group Tower, a shimmering, impossible needle piercing the Seoul skyline. The room itself, a temple of glass and steel, felt cold enough to shatter, yet I was burning with a dangerous anticipation.
My pulse didn't just thrum, it hammered with the sharp, merciless edge of battle readiness. Every detail of my presentation had been meticulously crafted, every potential challenge anticipated, every weakness armored. I was ready to conquer. Then Shin Jae-sung entered. The very air in the room seemed to compress, the light subtly dimming as if acknowledging a superior, almost predatory presence. He didn't walk. He traversed the space with the coiled grace of a man who understood the gravitational pull of his own authority, a silent, absolute command. He was not merely handsome. He was sculpted from granite and shadow. His navy suit was a work of art, enhancing the sharp, severe lines of his face and the intimidating height of his frame. His dark eyes, like polished obsidian, held a frightening depth of intelligence, a watchful, assessing intensity. He looked less like a corporate successor and more like the singular deity of this kingdom, a dangerous blend of inherited power and self-forged discipline. He crossed the room and offered his hand. The instant his palm met mine, a raw, electric tremor shot through me. His grip was warm, firm, and astonishingly, unnervingly familiar. It was not a professional handshake, it was a connection, a shockwave that reverberated through my entire being, as if we had met countless times in some other life, in some forbidden dream. Potent and entirely unbidden, it threatened to unravel the carefully woven fabric of my control. Aisha, his voice was a deep, resonant rumble, entirely too intimate for a first meeting, a sound that bypassed my ears and settled directly in my chest. Your work speaks a global language. It is profoundly dangerous. He didn't elaborate, but his eyes conveyed an instant recognition of the subversive power in my designs, how they challenged convention, how they dared to suggest new ways of experiencing luxury, new ways of being. It was dangerous because it was revolutionary, and revolution, even in aesthetics, threatened the established order, and perhaps the quiet order of my own heart. For the next hour, we didn't negotiate. We danced on the razor's edge of intellectual sparring. It was a thrilling, dangerous pas de deux of minds, moving past color palettes and into the philosophy of experience, the psychological impact of space, the very essence of human aspiration. He didn't just see my designs, he saw the why. He challenged the fundamental assumptions of my aesthetic, not with dismissal, but with a keen, incisive curiosity that forced me to articulate my vision with a depth I hadn't known I possessed. In that space, under the silent, powerful hum of his gaze, I forgot the contract, the glittering city lights, and the heavy lie on my finger. I was consumed by the electric, dangerous focus in his eyes. A close-up of desire. He was mid-sentence, dissecting the necessary audacity of the hotel lobby design. He paused, his gaze dropping to my mouth for a terrifying, deliberate fraction of a second before snapping back up to my eyes. The sudden, intense focus felt like a physical weight, crushing my chest. The freezing, sterile air of the boardroom suddenly turned thick and humid, charged with an invisible, reckless current, defying the rigid, professional geometry of the room. My breath hitched, a silent gasp caught in my throat. I felt the universe tilt. My meticulously ordered world shifted on its axis, not because of the stakes of the deal, but because of the seismic shift he had just triggered within me. I realized, with a jolt of visceral dread and exhilarating possibility, that I was looking at the most dangerous collaboration of my life. If he had asked me to stay, if he had expressed any interest beyond the professional, I knew, with a terrifying certainty, I would have dropped the entire perfect, lonely structure of my career to follow that current. I would have shattered my monument to control for the chance, however fleeting, of something real, something truly alive, something I had convinced myself I didn't need. The fraying thread. The contract was signed. 3 months of high-intensity, total collaboration.
The professional elation, sharp and fleeting, was quickly crushed by the sheer, suffocating dread of the proximity required. How could I maintain my carefully constructed facade, the armor of the ring, when every fiber of my being was screaming a different, desperate truth in his presence? We stood for the final formal handshake, the air still thick with the aftermath of our intellectual battle and the silent, searing currents that had passed between us. Jae-sung's gaze drifted from my eyes, following the clean, taut line of my arm, settling with deliberate, unnerving weight on the gold band. He smiled, a slight, almost painful contraction of his severe features. It was a look of instant, profound recognition, as if the ring confirmed some pre-existing hypothesis he held about me, or perhaps about the inherent sacrifices of the world. "Ah," he murmured, his thumb brushing the very edge of the ring, a gesture so quick it might have been imagined, yet it burned. The casual touch was pure agony, a violation of the fragile boundary I directed. His words were polite, perfectly composed, yet laced with an undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher. Was it genuine well-wishing, or a veiled, knowing acknowledgement of the precise nature of my sacrifice? "My apologies, Aisha. Congratulations. It must afford you a great deal of comfort during such demanding professional periods." The lie felt cold and metallic against my racing pulse, a chilling counterpoint to the heat his touch had left behind. I was paralyzed by the sincerity in his eyes, the understanding, or so I believed, that this ring, this lie, was a necessary professional tool. My throat seized. I couldn't speak the truth. The cost of admission was already too high, measured in years of struggle, in the relentless suppression of my own identity. "Thank you, Jae-sung-si," I forced out, my voice thin, brittle. "It is necessary for my work." His enigmatic smile vanished, replaced by an expression of deep, shared melancholy. He held my gaze for a long moment, acknowledging not just the ring, but the unspoken, crushing weight of commitment. "I understand the necessity of such commitments," he said, the words heavy with resignation, a silent burden as he finally released my hand. His fingers lingered for a fraction of a second too long, a silent acknowledgement of the connection he was forced to sever, a reluctant surrender. "More than you know." The phrase hung in the air, a tantalizing hint of his own hidden burdens, a mirror reflecting my own carefully guarded secrets, drawing me deeper into the treacherous currents between us. The pressure cooker. The weeks that followed were spent in a state of exquisite, controlled torment. Our adjacent offices, separated only by a sliding glass wall, offered a constant visual proximity that felt both a blessing and a curse. Through the transparent barrier, I could see the lines of fatigue around his eyes, the fierce concentration in his brow, the way he ran a hand through his dark hair when a problem proved particularly intractable. Each glimpse was a small, sharp stab, a reminder of the barrier between us, yet also a perverse comfort, a shared burden of ambition, a dangerous addiction. I never left before him, a competitive yet strangely intimate ritual. To concede first would be to show weakness, to admit the unbearable strain, to break the fragile tension humming between us. One Tuesday, past 12:30 in the morning, the entire floor was silent, a tomb of corporate ambition, filled only with the ghosts of deadlines. I was without my heels, my black silk blouse wrinkled, running purely on adrenaline and the dangerous, intoxicating proximity of the man next door. Jae-sung entered my space. He was in his shirt sleeves, his tie gone, the top button of his shirt undone. The sight of him, slightly disheveled and utterly dedicated, was more intoxicating than any perfectly tailored suit, revealing a raw, human intensity that resonated deep within me, threatening to dismantle my defenses. "We need to finalize the Shanghai schedule now," he stated, leaning against the doorframe. The simple act of his presence, his casual invasion of my space, altered the air pressure in the room, making it thick, suffocating. "It's scheduled," I confirmed, my voice steady, betraying none of the tremor in my hands. 4 days of complete immersion. I'm prepared. He didn't move. His gaze was searching, direct, as if he were looking for cracks in my polished facade. Does your husband, Minho-shi, accommodate this professional dedication easily? The late hours, the travel? He asked, the curiosity in his voice edged with a strange, searching envy, a subtle probe into the fragility of my lie. He wasn't just asking about Minho. He was asking about the cost, the sacrifice, the unspoken dynamics of a life I pretended to lead. Was he comparing it to his own burdens, his own gilded cage? The false name felt like an ugly intrusion, a stone thrown into the fragile, silent pond of our unspoken connection. Minho understands, I lied, reinforcing my fortress of control with every syllable. He supports the commitment required of us. I had to constantly reinforce the lie, layer by layer, burying myself further beneath its weight, even as every fiber of my being screamed for honesty, for release, for the dangerous truth to break free. The nearness of truth. He moved off the frame, crossing to my desk. He was looking at a schematic on my screen, but his entire focus was a radiant, undeniable heat directed at me. He leaned over, pointing to a detail on the monitor. His chest was inches from my shoulder. The powerful, masculine scent of him, wood smoke and clean linen, was a physical fact that drowned out the hum of the AC, blurring the sterile edges of the corporate space. My senses reeled, every nerve ending hyper-aware of his closeness, of the precarious balance of the moment. Then, reaching past me for the mouse, his strong fingers brushed the bare skin of my arm, just above the cuff of my blouse. It was instantaneous, accidental, and utterly devastating. A tremor of pure electric awareness shot through my body, leaving me paralyzed, unable to breathe. My breathing hitched. I was rigid with the terror of my own overwhelming reaction, a shockwave that went straight to my core, threatening to shatter every carefully constructed boundary. It wasn't just physical, it was a profound recognition, a soul-deep resonance that shook the very foundations of my carefully constructed world. He straightened immediately, his eyes slamming into mine. He saw the naked shock and the answering, reckless fire in my gaze. His own face flashed with a profound, instantaneous desire, followed by agonizing guilt, a stark battle waged in the depths of his obsidian eyes. The CEO dissolved, replaced by a man battling a fundamental, instinctual urge that defied all professional boundaries, all social conventions, all duty. He took a sharp, painful step back, creating a sudden, gaping chasm between us, where moments before there had been an electric bridge. He was battling a fundamental, instinctual urge, visibly rebuilding the wall brick by agonizing brick, reinforcing the defenses against a truth that had momentarily shattered them. My apologies, he clipped out, the words now sharp and cold, a desperate attempt to regain control. His voice was devoid of warmth, a stark contrast to the burning heat that still radiated from my skin where he had touched me. Review the load-bearing reports. Good night, Aisha. He left, the glass door sliding shut with a soft, final hiss, but the room remained saturated with the heat of his near touch and the agonizing certainty of our unspoken truth, a truth that had been laid bare in that fleeting, devastating moment. The silence that followed was not empty. It throbbed with the ghost of what could be and the crushing weight of what could not. The Shanghai Confession. The 4 days in Shanghai were an unrelenting masterpiece of emotional suppression. In every interaction, we were two professionals walking a tightrope of forbidden desire, inches above an abyss. Our eyes would meet across the conference table, a silent language passing between them that no one else could comprehend, a dangerous pact. We spoke of market trends and design philosophies, but every gesture, every lingering glance, every shared laugh was charged with an unspoken current, a treacherous undertow threatening to pull us both under. On the final evening, we ended up on the rooftop terrace, a necessary quiet after a brutal day of negotiations. The city was a glittering electric ocean below us. Its vibrant energy, its soaring skyscrapers and neon glow only amplifying the intensity of our internal struggle, mirroring the chaos within. "You are relentless, Aisha," Jae-sung said, his voice quiet, almost reverent, as he turned to face me. "A warrior. Few men in this company possess your fortitude, your sheer will." "It's the only way to survive the system," I replied, watching the neon reflections blur into shimmering streaks below. He turned fully to me, the sorrow in his eyes profound and arresting, a shared burden. "I, too, maintain a commitment of duty," he confessed, his voice barely audible above the city hum, raw with a pain that resonated with my own. "One that will bind me to an alliance for the sake of the family legacy. It is correct, it is necessary, but it is not a relationship of passion. It is a contract, a gilded cage." The revelation stunned me, a sudden, sharp intake of breath. He wasn't married, he was single, but his freedom was a ticking clock, counted down to an inevitable date. He was bound by an imminent, arranged engagement, a professional necessity that mimicked my own lie, a parallel deception. The bitter irony of our shared prisons hit me with full, devastating force. We were both prisoners of expectation, playing roles in a grand corporate drama, desperate for release. "I haven't felt this alive in years," he admitted, closing the distance between us, his voice raw with a desperate need, an unquenchable fire. "The conviction, the fire, it is intoxicating. And I respect your commitments, Aisha. I respect the ring." The words were meant to be a comfort, a respectful acknowledgement of my supposed bond, but they felt like a fresh wound, twisting the knife of my deceit. How could he respect a lie, a symbol of my own self-betrayal? He stopped, inches from me. The air between us was buzzing, thick with unspoken demands, with the dangerous hum of a truth desperate to break free. His eyes, usually so controlled, burned with an untamed intensity, reflecting the neon glow of the city like twin fires, a dangerous, beautiful inferno. The burden of my lie, of the cold, dead weight of the gold band on my finger, became unbearable. I had to confess. The truth, however devastating, was my only release. "Jae-sung-si," I whispered, lifting my left hand, the one bearing the symbol of deception. "You don't understand. I have to tell you." He cut me off. He reached out and captured my hand, the one I was trying to reveal. He lifted it slowly, deliberately, bringing it to his lips. He pressed a single, devastatingly chaste kiss to my knuckles, directly over the ring. It was an act of profound agony, honoring the boundary of the lie, yet pouring every ounce of his suppressed passion, his unspoken longing, into the formal touch. It was a farewell, not just to me, but to a possibility that hadn't even begun, a future he was choosing to relinquish for the sake of duty, for the sake of his legacy. The warmth of his lips, the slight rasp of his skin against mine, sent a jolt through me, a desperate, final connection before the severing. "Good night, Aisha," he breathed against my skin, his voice thick with unsaid goodbyes, a lament for what could never be, for a future stolen before it could even blossom. He released me, his hand falling away like a stone, leaving me stranded with the burning memory of his lips against the cold gold, watching him disappear into the glittering labyrinth of the city lights, a paradox of desire and despair. The interruption. The truth was worth the detonation of my career. The flight had been a blur of agonizing self-reflection, the weight of the lie crushing me, the memory of Jae-sung's kiss a constant, searing reminder of what I stood to lose and what I might gain. I would tell him everything, accept the consequences, and hope, against all logic, that the fierce truth he spoke of could somehow survive the wreckage. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of order, felt like a temporary holding cell, my luggage still half unpacked, a testament to my unsettled, volatile state. I was staring at the ring, the cold gold glinting under the dim light, when Minho's frantic call came through, a violent buzz against the silence. "Aisha, he's back early. He's on his way to your apartment now. Some lame excuse about a design flaw. He couldn't wait." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. He was coming. He was breaking protocol, shattering the carefully maintained distance, driven by a force he could no longer suppress. This was it, the moment of reckoning, the precipice. The doorbell chimed, formal, insistent, echoing in the quiet apartment. I walked to the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the deadbolt. Through the peephole, I saw the raw, beautiful determination on Jae-sung's face. His jaw was set, his dark eyes burning with an unmistakable purpose, a man who had made a monumental decision, ready to tear down walls. This is it, the risk, the truth, the possibility of everything. I pulled the bolt back. My phone vibrated with a text from Minho, a shrill warning sound, milliseconds too late. A death knell to my hopes, a harbinger of disaster. Wait, Soo-min is back in Seoul, his fiancée. She is traditional, powerful, and ruthless. If she sees him there or finds out about the lie, she will ruin the contract and your life. The door swung inward, my breath caught, poised on the precipice of confession, hope, and terror battling in my chest. But it wasn't Jae-sung. Standing on my threshold, regal and chillingly composed, was a woman dressed in expensive Korean silk, a deep emerald green that seemed to absorb all light, casting a subtle, predatory sheen. Her beauty was severe, almost intimidating, her flawless skin and elegant features honed by generations of privilege. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, held the chilling stillness of pure inherited power, a quiet authority that spoke of ancient lineage and unshakable influence. In her gloved hand, she held a silver-framed photograph of herself and Jae-sung, dated from a formal engagement ceremony, the image capturing them in traditional hanbok, their smiles composed, their hands linked in a gesture of dynastic alliance. It wasn't a picture of love, but of destiny, of a future meticulously planned and executed, a cold, undeniable claim. Aisha, she stated, her voice a low, lethal silk, each syllable perfectly enunciated, carrying the crushing weight of her name, her family, her power. I am Shin Soo-min, Jae-sung's fiancée. My family and I are to join the Shin group through alliance next month. A merger of legacies, you could say. Her words were a chilling pronouncement, a definitive territorial claim. She stepped into the apartment, uninvited, her gaze sweeping over the scattered luggage and my disheveled state, lingering with unnerving precision on the ring on my finger. A silent, knowing accusation in her sharp, assessing expression. And I want to know where your husband is, because my fiancé has made an unscheduled and highly inappropriate detour before coming home tonight. A detour that, I suspect, involves you. The last words hung in the air, cold and sharp as a newly forged blade, leaving no doubt as to the consequences of my deception and the precariousness of my very existence in her meticulously ordered world. The game had just changed, and I was utterly, terrifyingly unprepared for this new, formidable opponent who held my career and perhaps my life in her impeccably manicured hands.